The Xylar Imperium, a civilization forged in the cold vacuum of space, bound by protocols thicker than neutronium armor. Their starships, sleek obsidian daggers, sliced through nebulae, each maneuver dictated by algorithms perfected over millennia. Every Xylar citizen, from the lowest sanitation drone to the high commander, operated with clockwork precision, their lives meticulously planned and ruthlessly optimized. Order was paramount. Chaos, the ultimate enemy. Their domains spanned countless star systems, each planet a cog in the vast, intricate machine of the Imperium. Worlds were terraformed, resources extracted, and populations managed, all in service of the grand, unwavering mission: galactic domination through bureaucratic efficiency. Every decision, every decree, every dietary supplement was scrutinized, analyzed, and approved by committees dedicated to the minutiae of existence. The Xylar believed that with enough paperwork, the universe itself could be brought to heel. But even the most meticulously crafted systems are vulnerable to the unexpected. A rogue asteroid, a supernova, or in this case, a human. A single, unremarkable specimen plucked from a backwater planet called Earth and thrust into the heart of the Xylar Imperium. This human's arrival was, to put it mildly, a glitch in the matrix, a variable they simply couldn't compute. His presence was a fly in the ointment, a smudge on the pristine surface of their perfect order. They called him Subject Earthling, Bob. And little did the Xylar know, Bob was about to show them just how fragile an empire built on paperwork could be. His very existence threatened to unravel the fabric of their reality. One misplaced decimal point, one ignored regulation, one unbelievably strong cup of coffee at a time. The Imperium was about to learn that some things, even in the cold, calculating depths of space, are best left unplanned. Bob wasn't exactly what the Xylar expected. Picture this: a being lounging in a standardized Xylar domicile unit, feet propped up on a regulation storage cube, wearing what appeared to be his pajamas patterned with cartoon rockets, no less. This was Bob, the human. He'd arrived via a rather messy wormhole incident. The details were still classified, mostly because the Xylar in charge of the report had a nervous breakdown halfway through writing it. Officially, Bob was a cultural exchange initiative. Unofficially, he was a giant question mark in their otherwise predictable universe. The average Xylar citizen approached life with the solemnity of a galactic court judge. Bob, on the other hand, seemed to treat the entire Imperium as one big, slightly confusing amusement park. He shrugged at directives, chuckled at regulations, and once, famously, used a restricted access data port to order a pizza, or rather, his approximation of a pizza, which involved nutrient paste, some scavenged fungi, and a concerning amount of lubricant. His first interaction with a Xylar official, a particularly uptight compliance officer named Xylar, set the tone for everything that followed. Xylar, upon finding Bob's unauthorized culinary experiment, issued a stern reprimand, citing 17 different regulations. Bob's response: "Relax, buddy. Want a slice? It's experimental." Xylar, naturally, filed a formal complaint, which was then filed within another complaint, then buried in a complaint sandwich that took 17 Xylar days to process. The cultural misunderstandings piled up faster than discarded paperwork after a bureaucratic audit. Bob called High Commander Zorgon Sparky. He tried to teach a sanitation bot to moonwalk. He even attempted to explain the concept of sarcasm to a species that considered literal truth the only acceptable form of communication. It was, to put it mildly, a disaster. A glorious, slow-motion disaster that was about to bring the Xylar Imperium to its knees. Assigned to Sector Gamma 9, Level 4, Bob's new job was monitoring and maintaining Weapon 734. The Xylar took this weapon very seriously. According to their meticulously cross-referenced databases, Weapon 734 was capable of planetary disintegration with minimal collateral damage. In other words, boom, planet gone. But the space dust settles nicely. Bob, naturally, didn't read the manual. He glanced at the schematics, yawned, and then started poking around. The device itself was large and imposing, all gleaming metal and ominous humming. Dials covered in Xylar script lined the control panel, next to a big red button labeled predictably Activate. It took Bob approximately 3 hours, a wrench, and a disturbing amount of humming to figure out what Weapon 734 actually did. It wasn't a planet destroyer. It was, in fact, a highly sophisticated, over-engineered, and utterly ridiculous beverage synthesizer. Its primary function? To create an astonishing array of teas. Apparently, the Xylar, beneath their rigid exterior, were obsessed with tea. Who knew? The possibilities swam before Bob's eyes. Disintegrating planets was so, last Tuesday. Synthesizing beverages? Now, that had potential. His first modification was simple. He recalibrated the nutrient paste input. Instead of the standard Xylar blend of algae and protein sludge, he rerouted the device to utilize some confiscated fruit he'd borrowed from the hydroponics lab. The result? A rather alarming shade of purple liquid that tasted vaguely of berries. The Xylar monitoring the system, a junior technician named Fleep, nearly short-circuited his sensory receptors when the energy readings spiked. Planetary disintegration required a stable energy flow. Fruity beverages? Apparently not so much. Fleep filed a report, of course. Protocol demanded it. But the report was buried under 17 layers of paperwork concerning a minor infraction in Sector Beta 12 involving unauthorized algae cultivation. By the time anyone noticed the anomaly, Bob had moved on to his next project. This time, he decided to tackle the flavor enhancers. The Xylar, in their infinite wisdom, had only programmed the machine to produce variations of calming and energizing tea. Bob found this limiting. So he bypassed the flavor matrix and introduced his own additives. Chili peppers, scavenged chocolate shavings, and a particularly pungent spice he'd found in the ventilation system. The resulting concoction was interesting. It tasted like burning, followed by chocolate, followed by a sensation vaguely resembling being punched in the face by a sentient cactus. Bob declared it surprisingly refreshing and started offering samples to passing sanitation bots. The sanitation bots, bless their simple programming, experienced a system-wide existential crisis. One bot started reciting Xylar poetry backward. Another attempted to perform interpretive dance with a discarded cleaning mop. A third simply shut down and began emitting a high-pitched whine that resonated throughout Sector Gamma 9. The incidents, of course, were meticulously documented. But each report was more confusing than the last. Technicians scratched their carapaces in bewilderment. Compliance officers developed nervous tics. And High Commander Zorgon, upon hearing about the chaos, began to experience a feeling he couldn't quite identify. It felt suspiciously like annoyance. The increasingly erratic behavior of the sanitation bots, coupled with the strange fluctuations in Weapon 734's energy output, did not go unnoticed for long. Xylar officials, accustomed to precise data and predictable outcomes, found themselves drowning in a sea of inexplicable anomalies. Reports piled up, each detailing a new and bizarre malfunction. Flickering lights, misplaced equipment, and a pervasive smell of something vaguely fruity mixed with chili peppers. Bureaucratic alarm bells began to clang. The Department of Planetary Integrity launched a formal investigation, assigning a team of highly specialized technicians to assess the situation in Sector Gamma 9. These technicians, rigorously trained in the art of Xylar logic, arrived armed with diagnostic tools, flowcharts, and an unwavering belief in the power of protocol. Their initial findings were inconclusive. Weapon 734 appeared to be functioning within acceptable parameters, at least according to the original specifications. However, the energy signatures were unusual. Erratic spikes and dips danced across their monitors, defying all known principles of Xylar physics. When questioned, Bob offered explanations that were, to put it mildly, unhelpful. He spoke of flavor profiles, experimental infusions, and the importance of a good caffeine kick. His terminology was alien, his logic baffling. The technicians exchanged nervous glances, suspecting either a catastrophic system failure or, worse, a severe breach of protocol. The investigation quickly escalated. Compliance officers joined the fray, meticulously reviewing Bob's file, his work history, and his dietary habits. They discovered a disturbing pattern of creative interpretations of Xylar regulations. Bob, it seemed, had a knack for finding loopholes, bending rules, and generally doing things his own way. The more they investigated, the more perplexed they became. Was Bob deliberately sabotaging Weapon 734? Was he attempting to destabilize the sector? Or was he simply incompetent? The possibilities swirled in their minds, each more unsettling than the last. Suspicion began to fester. Whispers circulated among the Xylar staff. Was Bob a spy, a saboteur, or something even more sinister? The tension in Sector Gamma 9 grew thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Everyone watched Bob, waiting for him to make his next move, unsure of what that move might be, but certain that it would be unexpected. As the Xylar struggled to comprehend the human element, their rigid structures began to creak. The foundations of their carefully ordered world were starting to tremble, all thanks to one seemingly insignificant human and his unique approach to intergalactic beverage synthesis. The Xylar way, logical and efficient, was failing. The escalating crisis in Sector Gamma 9 demanded attention from the highest echelons of the Xylar Imperium. High Commander Zorgon, a figure of immense authority, and even greater seriousness, was summoned. Zorgon was renowned throughout the galaxy for his unwavering adherence to logic, his encyclopedic knowledge of Xylar regulations, and his complete lack of a sense of humor. He arrived at Weapon 734's monitoring station with an entourage of heavily armed guards and a portable data analysis unit the size of a small transport ship. His multifaceted eyes scanned the room, absorbing every detail, every anomaly, every misplaced comma in the maintenance logs. The air crackled with his displeasure. "Subject Earthling," Zorgon boomed, his voice resonating with the weight of 1,000 bureaucratic decrees. "Explain yourself." Bob, perched casually on a repurposed equipment crate, looked up with a disarming grin. "Hey there, Commander. What's shakin'?" He gestured vaguely at Weapon 734. "Just making a few adjustments." Zorgon's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Adjustments?" The data clearly indicates a series of fluctuations, unexplained fluctuations. Fluctuations that violate 17 separate sections of Intergalactic Protocol 349 Theta. Yeah, well, protocols are more like guidelines, right? Bob chuckled, earning him a chorus of confused clicks from the Xylar guards. "I figured I'd spice things up a bit. Liven the place up, you know?" Zorgon stared at Bob, his mind struggling to process such blatant disregard for Xylar authority. "Spice things up? You are tampering with a weapon of planetary disintegration. This is not some recreational activity." "Planetary disintegration, really?" Bob raised an eyebrow. "Sounds a bit harsh for what I'm using it for, though I guess you could disintegrate a really bad coffee bean with it." The High Commander was a being of unparalleled intelligence, but his mind was trained to operate within the rigid confines of Xylar logic. Bob's words were like a virus, disrupting the carefully constructed algorithms of his thought processes. He felt a disturbing sensation, akin to confusion. "Explain," Zorgon commanded, his voice strained. "Explain this. Coffee bean and its relevance to Weapon 734. Bob launched into a detailed explanation of the art of coffee brewing, describing the nuances of bean selection, the importance of water temperature, and the subtle alchemy of the perfect espresso. Zorgon listened intently, his data analysis unit whirring furiously, attempting to categorize this coffee within the Xylar lexicon. The more Bob spoke, the more frustrated Zorgon became. He could not understand the purpose, the logic, or the appeal of this strange human ritual. It defied all reason, all protocol, all that he held sacred. "This is irrelevant," Zorgon finally exclaimed, his voice echoing through the station. Your obsession with this young coffee is jeopardizing the security of the entire sector. You will cease your modifications immediately. Bob shrugged. All right, keep your multifaceted eyes on. But you gotta admit, Commander, a galaxy run on lukewarm nutrient paste is a pretty depressing galaxy. He winked. Just saying. Zorgon stormed out of the station, his guards struggling to keep pace. He retreated to his command ship, determined to unravel the mystery of Bob and his insidious coffee. He would apply the full force of Xylar logic to this problem, and he would not rest until he had uncovered the human's true motives. Little did he know, the more he tried to understand Bob, the closer he would come to unraveling the very fabric of the Xylar Imperium. The seeds of chaos had been sown, and the only ingredient needed for them to sprout was a single, perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Zorgon, his patience stretched thinner than a sheet of plasteel, finally cornered Bob in the Weapon 734 maintenance bay. The air crackled with suppressed bureaucratic fury. Subject Earthling, he began, his voice a low thrum of controlled anger. I have reviewed your activities, the sensor logs, the energy, fluctuations, the inexplicable scent of burnt organic matter. Explain, now. Bob, who was humming tunelessly while polishing a small metallic disc, looked up with a sigh. All right, Commander. No need to get your multifaceted eyes in a twist. It's really not that complicated. He paused, as if searching for the right words. It's an espresso machine. Zorgon's 3 hearts skipped a beat. An espresso machine? You claim Weapon 734, a device capable of obliterating celestial bodies, is a beverage preparation unit? His voice dripped with disbelief. Well, yeah, Bob said matter-of-factly. I mean, that's what it was supposed to be. I figured it out after like 5 minutes. All that talk about disintegration beams and planetary annihilation? Total marketing hogwash. He gestured to the machine, its intricate network of tubes and gleaming nozzles looking less menacing and more caffeinated. It's all about pressure, temperature, and the perfect grind. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to find a decent cup of coffee in this, Imperium of yours. Zorgon stared at the machine, then back at Bob, his mind struggling to reconcile the human's words with the data he had painstakingly analyzed. But the schematics, the energy readings, the existential threat assessment. Bob shrugged. Look, Commander, I'm not an engineer or anything, but I'm pretty sure those schematics were just ripped off from some ancient Italian dude. And the existential threat was probably just caffeine withdrawal. He picked up the metallic disc he'd been polishing. See this? This is the portafilter. You pack the coffee in here, lock it into the group head, and voila! Liquid gold. He grinned. Or, a slightly bitter, highly addictive stimulant. Zorgon was speechless. The weight of the Xylar Imperium, the countless hours of strategic planning, the endless regulations all rested on the foundation of logic and order. And now, this human was telling him that it all hinged on a misidentified coffee maker. But why? Zorgon finally stammered. Why would you dismantle a weapon of mass destruction to make coffee? Bob's smile faded slightly. Because, Commander, he said, his voice unusually serious, life's too short to drink bad coffee. He paused, then added with a wink, besides, a well-caffeinated galaxy is a productive galaxy, right? The revelation hit the Xylar Imperium like a rogue asteroid, sudden, unexpected, and utterly devastating. Weapon 734, the pride of their arsenal. The deterrent that kept rebellious systems in line was nothing more than a glorified coffee pot. The sheer absurdity of it all short-circuited the normally hyperlogical Xylar brains. The first cracks appeared in the bureaucratic facade. Reports went unfiled. Directives were ignored. Efficiency ratings plummeted. Xylar citizens, suddenly, questioning everything they thought they knew, began to experiment. They started cautiously, brewing small batches of the mysterious coffee using Bob's instructions. The bitter, unfamiliar taste initially repulsed them, but the strange jolt of energy, that was something new, something stimulating. Soon, Clandestine coffee circles sprung up in the shadows of government buildings. Whispered recipes were exchanged. Black market coffee beans became more valuable than rare minerals. The rigid structure of Xylar society, built on millennia of unwavering obedience, began to wobble like a poorly stacked pile of data crystals. High Commander Zorgon, the embodiment of Xylar logic and order, watched in horror as his carefully constructed world unraveled. He tried to issue directives to restore order, to remind his citizens of their duty, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears, or rather ears buzzing with caffeine. He convened emergency councils, consulted with the wisest minds in the Imperium, but no one could offer a solution. How could they fight an enemy they couldn't understand? An enemy that tasted like burnt sugar? Driven to the brink of madness, Zorgon decided to confront the source of the chaos himself. He stormed into the Weapons 734 maintenance bay, his multifaceted eyes blazing with fury. Bob, predictably, was there, tinkering with the machine, humming a jaunty Earth tune. "Earthling!" Zorgon roared, his voice echoing through the bay. "You have single-handedly destroyed everything we have built. Our order, our efficiency, our very way of life." Bob looked up, unfazed. "Hey, Commander, what's with the long face? Need a pick-me-up?" He gestured to a steaming cup of dark liquid. "I just brewed a fresh batch of dark roast. Guatemalan, if you're interested." Zorgon hesitated. He had never consumed anything that wasn't nutrient paste or purified water, but the aroma, it was strangely alluring. He took a tentative sip. His eyes widened. His antennae twitched. 1,000 calculations ran through his brain, analyzing the complex chemical compounds, the subtle nuances of flavor. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Slowly, a smile crept across Zorgon's normally stern face. He took another sip and another. The chaos around him seemed to fade away. The weight of the Imperium lifted from his shoulders. "This," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "this is remarkable." He finished the cup in one gulp. "Another," he demanded, holding out the empty vessel. "And make it a latte this time. I've been reading up on Earth beverages." And so High Commander Zorgon, the iron-fisted ruler of the Xylar Imperium, succumbed to the allure of a perfectly brewed latte. The fate of the galaxy, it seemed, rested on the foamy surface of a caffeinated beverage. As the Xylar civilization embraced this newfound coffee culture, a palpable shift occurred. The rigid, metallic landscapes began sprouting vibrant cafes, adorned with alien flowers and quirky art. The citizens, once slaves to efficiency, now lingered over cups, engaging in lively debates about brewing techniques and the merits of different bean origins. Bob watched the transformation with a mixture of amusement and satisfaction. His mission, initially a desperate attempt to alleviate boredom, had inadvertently sparked a revolution. But his time among the Xylar was coming to an end. He had managed to secure passage on a passing freighter, eager to explore new corners of the galaxy, perhaps spreading the gospel of good coffee wherever he went. Before he left, he insisted on one final broadcast to the entire Xylar network. The signal went live, displaying Bob's image across every screen in the Imperium. He stood there, a simple human amidst the gleaming technology, a mischievous grin on his face. He leaned into the microphone and spoke his last words, a final jab at the absurdity of it all. "Don't forget to tip your barista." The transmission ended, leaving the Xylar in stunned silence, followed by a wave of laughter that echoed across the transformed empire. Centuries passed. The Xylar Imperium, once a symbol of unyielding order and galactic expansion, was no more. In its place stood something different, something aromatic. The rigid bureaucratic systems that had defined the Xylar were gone, replaced by a network of bustling coffee shops and open-air cafes. Where once efficiency reports and planetary conquest strategies were discussed, now the Xylar debated the optimal temperature for milk frothing and the subtle notes of ethically sourced space beans. The citizens themselves had undergone a remarkable transformation. Their movements, once precise and calculated, were now relaxed, almost languid. They adorned themselves in brightly colored fabrics, traded jokes, and even, gasp, created art. And in the heart of the capital city, on the very spot where High Commander Zorgon's imposing headquarters once stood, was a statue, not of a great warrior nor a brilliant scientist, but of a simple human. Bob. He stood eternally, cast in shimmering Xylar bronze, a steaming cup of coffee perpetually. In his hand, a faint, knowing smile on his face. The inscription at the base read, "He brought us coffee. We brought ourselves." The galaxy chuckled. Empires rose and fell, but the aroma of perfectly brewed coffee continued to waft from the planet that was once the seat of the mighty Xylar Imperium, a testament to the fact that sometimes the smallest things can change everything. And sometimes all it takes is a decent cup of coffee to bring down an empire.